Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So today is May 31st. On this day in history, by the way, I'm still in at the global corporate headquarters here in Springfield, Missouri. Global corporate headquarters of Prime Inc. here in Springfield. Today in history, several noteworthy people were born today, and if you're one of them, happy birthday. Clint Eastwood was born on this day, and yeah, he's still alive. He's 93 years old. Who else was born? Walt Whitman, guy that wrote Leaves of Grass, or you may be more familiar with the poem he wrote, Oh Captain, My Captain, which is he wrote after Lincoln's assassination, but it's about Lincoln. Who else? John Bonham, drummer for Led Zeppelin, was born on this day. Also Joe Namath, Broadway Joe, was born on this day. This day in 1889, the Johnstown flood happened in Pennsylvania, killed 2,208 people. But the flood is, I saw a description of it as a natural disaster. But the Johnstown flood, and by the way, there's a book called The Johnstown Flood by David McCullough, who is one of my favorite history writer/historians. Every book that McCullough has written, if you get a McCullough book, read it. He wrote about all sorts of different things, but everything he wrote was just the best, right? He's the guy that wrote Adams, about John Adams, that was made into the movie with Paul Giamatti as John Adams. He wrote about the Brooklyn Bridge, the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's a great book because it's how we were able to do big things and get big projects done, which really does seem like we're lacking in these days. But he also wrote about the Johnstown flood. And the Johnstown flood, though, was really more accurately the breach and the absolute failure of a dam that was built, and the subsequent rush of water just basically wiped out 1,000 houses and stuff. But the interesting thing about it, and this is a recurring theme, it still happens today in various ways. The water behind the dam that failed was actually a private hunting and fishing lake for rich people from Pittsburgh, industrialists like Frick and all these people. There were like 50 homes up there. And the reason that the dam was there to begin with is the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, built it as part of a canal system. Well, then when the railroads kind of took over and stuff wasn't moved by barge as much, Pennsylvania Railroad bought the dam, but then they eventually sold it to some private individuals who kind of speculated and made this like exclusive area for rich people to go hunt and fish. And but the thing that the rich people did is they modified the dam so they could drive across it or take carriages across it, because this is 1889. So they cut off like 3 feet of the dam height. And the other thing they did is there was a system that would drain water, not a spillway, but like a piping system that could drain water from the lake in the event that they needed to lower the water level. Well, that piping system was also dismantled and sold for scrap, right? So somebody could make some money on it. And that, coupled with lowering the dam's height, when torrential rains came, the dam, there was no spillway, there was no way to relieve pressure on the dam by releasing some water downstream. And so the dam failed, and a bunch of working class people died, like over 2,200. 2,208, I think, is the number. The other thing that happened is the people that were victims of this, their families and everything, they sued, and they got nothing. They got nothing. So, Johnstown flood. Another horrific event that happened on this day was the Tulsa race massacre. This was in 1922, I believe. But what happened in Tulsa was there was a black man that was accused of assaulting a white woman. Black people marched to the courthouse, white people marched to the courthouse, and there was violence. Subsequently, about 300 plus people, mostly African Americans, were murdered in an area, and the area of Tulsa called Greenwood, which was kind of like, people have called it the Black Wall Street, but there was, black businesses, black entrepreneurs, stuff. That was wiped out, burned to the ground, and yeah. And I said 1922, but it might have been earlier than that. It might have been like 1908. But I'll check on that. Okay, so what am I doing? What's my next move here? So, a lot of people took from the video that I put up yesterday that I was like done at Prime, and that I was punching out. That's not the case, and I think maybe what was lost in translation was what I was saying about companies in general, right? Prime is just a company. It's a decent sized company. I mean, in terms of employees, it's not that big, but it's a big company. And anything big, unless people are super active in trying to constantly improve the process, anything that's big, the process does not improve or, even keep up without a lot of heavy lifting. It's like turning an aircraft carrier. It doesn't happen in a tiny area. And, Prime, candidly, is a victim, and by extension, the drivers are victims of its own success. In other words, the drivers that come to Prime that make Prime successful, and all the good things that happen at Prime that make it successful also make it a pain in the ass to work here, right? When Prime only had 1,000 trucks, they didn't have as much infrastructure, but it might be that there were a lot more trailers that were ready to go per capita. Prime has a problem right now with growth, and I used to say this to clients. It's great when your business is just like exploding, and it happens. It happened in my business, right, where all of a sudden I needed to double the size of my business. Now, we're not talking hundreds of people, we're talking like another 8 people that I wanted to hire, right? But when you only have 8 people, and then suddenly you're like, man, we need to add 8 people. In other words, we're going to double the size of our company. That's a big thing, right? And so Prime, if you look at Prime's growth, it continues to grow. It's doing something right. Now, that growth, though, has to be managed properly. And that's where a lot of companies, fall short, and I think Prime is falling short too. You know, if you can't, if you're hiring people in one area, but you can't hire people in another area to support them, then it doesn't do you any good. It would be like having an army of 10,000 people, but all 10,000 of them are infantrymen. And as soon as they run out of ammo, there's nobody that's not an infantryman. There's nobody that's a logistician that can get ammo and food to the front lines. There's no medical personnel. There's no artillery, right? There's no, air assets. Everybody's just carrying a rifle. We got 10,000 highly trained infantrymen, and that's it. And so, that's the problem at Prime right now. They can't support the infrastructure, and the personnel assets can't support the day-to-day operations of the company. But having said that, right, and by the way, I had a client one time, and there are other companies that are innovative and recognize these problems. I used to have a client when I was at MetLife, and she worked at Northrop Grumman in Northern Virginia. And her job, I said, well, I would, because we always had to fill out this information on people, but like, what's your job title? And she's like, change manager. And I said, what's a change manager? And I said, do you just give out when somebody needs change for $1? You just give them quarters or whatever? She's like, no. A change manager is any time the company's doing something that they haven't done before, then my group is involved in it, and we manage the change, because people are slow to accept change and slow to implement change. And when you're in a business like Northrop Grumman is, right, defense contracting, change is inevitable and it's necessary. And, so there's not, and that's the thing, right? Like when somebody's core competency is X, they're going to be resistant to making it X and Y. They're going to be resistant to change. And it's like company, and this happens in lots of industries. Trucking is, at the end of the day, it's the same as it's been for 50 years. It's picking something up and dropping it off undamaged, on time, right? That's been Prime's job since it was formed in 1970, right? And even 20, 30 years before that, all these companies that say, oh, we've been around for 100 years or whatever, you see it on their trailers or and stuff, they've been doing the same thing for 100 years. They don't do anything different. If you look at a lot of big companies in America, they do stuff that's significantly different than what they started out doing. So it's just, the evolution of trucking is it's a very short story in a way, right? It's just get bigger, get more customers, get more market share, and constantly go through drivers and try to keep your trucks on the road, right? That's the business model. And so a lot of companies that's what they do. Now, I've said this before, that the shops at Prime, and I want to be clear, I don't have anything bad to say about the people that work in the shops at Prime. Is every mechanic there good or great? Probably not. But by and large, they seem to do a decent job. It's just that they're overwhelmed. But it's not, if some dude's turning wrenches or, fixing equipment, it's not his job to hire another guy to do that, right? It's his job to just focus on what he's doing and, you know, work his shift and then, you know, clean the grease off his hands and go home. But you know, that guy has more pressure on him because somebody that's, you know, not getting dirty every day, not working in, you know, hot temperatures or cold temperatures or uncomfortable cramped spaces, crawling around on machinery, that other person hasn't done anything or hasn't done enough about getting people hired. But that's a problem everywhere. I just saw today, you know, like, you know, job numbers are, you know, there's more job openings, you know, and the truth is we're going through this big upheaval in the employment markets. Now, I don't identify a problem. Well, I sometimes identify problems that I don't have solutions for. But often when I see a problem and I'm vocal about it, it's because I know there's a better way to do things. You know, because sometimes people say, and I've said this, you know, don't criticize people if you can't do a better job. So typically if I'm like really critical of something, yeah, I definitely think I could do a better job. I think I could run that better. Okay? Now, that's not like, I'm not like Pollyannish, and I'm not like thinking I'm better than other people. I just think I have different ideas and a different approach to things. And, you know, that comes from a lot of different things, right? But, you know, a lot of different life experience. But here's the thing. You can't, you know, like, there's a saying, I had a commanding officer who used to say this: if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. Okay? Since I've been at Prime, they've been like, oh yeah, we just can't hire people. Okay, well then stop doing the same thing. They got the same crap on their website as they've had forever, right? Stop it. Just come up with something new, revolutionary, and try it. Because even if it fails, and Colin Powell once said this, he goes, the problem, you know, he said, Americans in America have never, it's never been a problem when we've tried something and failed. Because we eventually overcome the failure and have something good come of it. The problem is when we never tried something at all. Okay? Failure is just one step away from success. But not trying means you're never going to have success, right? And so to do something the same way you've been doing it and continue to fail and fail and fail, that's just, you know, I mean, it's irresponsible, right? It's a lack of vision. It's a lack of imagination. And so here are a couple of solutions, and I'm not going to get deep in the weeds on these because they are a little bit complicated, but, you know, they might work, you know, and a company the size of Prime could probably make it happen. The first idea that I had to overcome this huge deficit of skilled workers is to do something crazy, right? And that is say, hey, we're going to make all of our shops company-wide union shops. And we're going to go out to, there's a union called SMART, which is some rail workers are in SMART, but basically it's like skilled trades, everything from sheet metal workers, welders. I don't know if the rail mechanics, the diesel mechanics on the railroads are a part of SMART, but I would go to a craftsman union, or maybe two of them, because you got lots of different skill sets, and I'd say, look, we're going to unionize. We're going to give our people union benefits. We're going to give them pensions, right? Like, you think about the benefits and a lot of these guys are paid like on production, like how many jobs they do and stuff. But but you know, when a guy gets to a point where he's like, hey, I made enough money this week. You know, that's how people think, right? They don't want to work 60 hours a week if they're making enough working 45, right? They want to have some free time. But the other thing is, like I noticed they had a 401k for these folks, and they have a 5% company match, you know, and I was like, yeah, so what? The 401k was invented to basically so companies could quit having pensions, right? Instead of saying, oh, hey, we'll match 5% of your salary and you can put it in the market, and maybe it'll make money, maybe it won't, you know, but that's what you'll have when you retire. You know, let's quit doing, you know, you can still have a 401k, but give them a pension, right? Say, look, we're gonna put this much money away, and it's gonna be in a, you know, like a money market account, right? And it's all gonna be yours at the end when you're finished. And we're gonna put, you know, I don't know, we're gonna put $20,000 a year away, and every year that you stay, we're gonna add 1,000 to it. So if you're here 40 years, we'll be putting $40,000 into your pension, and then you'll have, you know, this huge pile of money, and it'll be paid out like an annuity. You'll get like $1,000 a month or whatever when you retire. In addition to that, they'd be paying Social Security, of course, and they'd be, you know, doing their 401k, whatever. But then there's an incentive for people to work here, and there's an incentive for people to stay here. But the other thing that a union does is unions do the heavy lifting on a lot of the hiring, because unions want more members. So they'll go find people, right? They'll say, hey, we have union jobs. They have their apprentice schools. They'll bring people to you that want to get hired. Because here's the other thing. Let's say that you don't really pay attention to, you know, like Prime's everywhere. But when I tell people I work for Prime, they're like, oh yeah, I think I have seen one of their trucks. Like, it's like trucking companies are not in everybody's, you know, like they're not front and center, right? Like Walmart and Target are front and center because people shop there all the time. But they don't think about who's bringing this stuff there. They don't know that Prime is this huge company. And so what I would do is see if you could work out something with unions, right? Because it would ultimately make you more profitable. Because it can't be profitable to have drivers sitting around. Well, let's put it this way. You could be more profitable by having your equipment working more, right? And you probably wouldn't have to pay, because I'm guessing they're paying a lot of people overtime. In fact, they say it on their website. You get all the overtime you want. Overtime is not a great way to manage the fact that you don't have enough personnel, right? You could bring in union people, pay union benefits, and it still would probably cost less than paying people overtime and having no trailers available at your biggest terminal. So that's one solution. Another solution, which you know, a lot of American companies get this. Another solution is to bring in immigrants who are willing to work and can do this work. And, you know, when I was in the Middle East, I quickly came to realize that the people that do all the heavy lifting in the Middle East, turn all the wrenches, they're Filipinos. Some Indonesians, some from other countries, but a lot of Filipinos, right? Like I used to see these Filipinos working on these generator barges, which would supply power to like Navy ships when ships had to go cold iron, like in Bahrain and stuff. And, excuse me. And, you know, I'm sure that if Prime went over to Manila, Cebu, a few places in the Philippines, they could recruit people to come over here and work in their shops. And I would say I would even build housing. Like, there's plenty of land available here in Springfield. I'd build housing. I'd be like, hey, we're building these 3-bedroom townhouses. You know, we'll rent them to the workers. We could probably pay the workers, you know, what we pay the workers that are here now, but then they would be paying us rent. We have an infrastructure so they feel like they don't have to like jump through hoops to survive and everything, and just have these guys working, right? Like, there are plenty of people around the world that want to come here and work and have skills that are valuable to us, right? I mean, if you've been to any meat packing plant, you know for a fact that the vast majority of work at any meat processor is done by people that have brown or black skin. I mean, it's Somalis, it's Salvadorans, it's Guatemalans, right? I mean, that's who's working at these plants. Look around, man. You go to like Lexington, Nebraska, to go to Walmart, and there's a bunch of black people in there that are clearly Muslims, right? Well, they're from like Somalia or whatever. They're not there because Lexington, Nebraska is like, you know, a destination for Somalis, except for the fact there's a huge meat packing plant there that they work in. So those are two solutions. And, you know, you say, well, that's crazy, you know. Well, maybe you need a crazy idea. By the way, I don't think those are crazy ideas. I mean, other industries do stuff just like that, right? And so, you know, it wouldn't surprise me that, you know, like with the union thing, that there are people that have union jobs in other places, and then they'd be like, oh, well, I kind of would like to move to Springfield, Missouri. But they're not going to move down here for a job that doesn't have the same security and benefits as the job they have, right? You got to sweeten the pot, and it's not just about what you're paying them today. It's about the future. So, in conclusion, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I am going somewhere. Hopefully tonight I'll get a load. I am gonna get my new truck. I'm just, you know, taking care of some paperwork, and I had to get some changes made to the contract. By the way, I've already reviewed the lease agreement. There's something interesting that happened since I signed my last lease. So in my last lease, there was a buyout provision for the truck, and the difference, and there's a buyout provision in the lease that I haven't yet signed it, but I will. There's a buyout provision, but the difference is there's not a schedule with set dollar amounts like there is in my old lease. This current one says fair market value, and I think the reason is because Prime probably lost some money, because what happened is people had leases and then they were able to buy trucks, and those trucks were actually, because of the schedule that was in the contract, those trucks were being sold to drivers at less than fair market value. So now there's a fair market value purchase clause. So basically, it's not a known amount right now. You would just have to say, okay, what's the fair market value? In other words, they would say, here's what we want for the truck. You could either, I guess you could negotiate it, which is always, I don't mind. Or you could, you know, say, nah, that's not going to work for me. But anyway, I hope that dispels, you know, I think everybody was like, oh man, he's gone. And, you know, like I said, this company is no worse than any other company. I mean, I could tell you right now, there are companies I worked at where the shops suck. They weren't open 24 hours a day. I mean, at least you know people are working as much as possible to get stuff fixed. But like when I was at night, the shop's 9 to 5, man. And I mean, when it was 5, forget about it. I don't care what was going on. You weren't getting any help. And you weren't getting any help earlier than their hours started. Same thing at J&R Schugel. Forget about it. So I don't think Prime has bad shops. I think Prime has issues with personnel management and hiring. But I also wish people didn't kind of slough it off on everybody else. So accountability is still an issue, but like I said, this company's no different than any other company out there. So anyway, hope everybody's doing well. Enjoy the last day of May, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.